But so if a person can dial in these three aspects, do you feel that they have a pretty good chance that their testosterone level is going to start rising?
Yeah, it depends, I guess, what the current state of affairs is. But I think we can make baby steps and improve really well. And we can bring in a fourth category, which would be like lifestyle, and especially your romantic relationship. Dr. John Gray says this is like making or breaking your hormone status for males and females. And so if you have a dysfunctional love relationship, you will take your testosterone to the level of having horrible sleep habits and eating junk food because you feel diminished. You get into arguments. The arguments are, extremely energy depleting and depleting your essence as a person because you feel undervalued, diminished, and not heard, and not poor communication and all these stressful things. And the book Beyond Mars and Venus goes into a lot of detail about how the female hormonal needs from a relationship and the male hormonal needs from a relationship. I think we should go into those because they're short, but they're life-changing takeaways.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So we are going to hit both sides, people, and not taking on no females out there, nor males. And of course, the attributes apply to all manner of relationships, including same sex. So it's the same dynamics, but just for simplicity, we'll talk about like John Gray's essential relationship assignment for the male. And the male is to remain calm, cool, and collected at all times. Do not speak if you are experiencing a negative emotional charge. So you never take it to your romantic partner when you are lit up. You always, speak from loving kindness anyway, but by getting into engagement and arguing, sometimes the females have this need to verbally work through things with great intensity, and that's how they get to their relationship wholeness. But whenever a man goes into it and starts getting into it with a female, he will experience this diminished testosterone level because that's not how the male biological drive. And again, I don't want to offend anybody in today's modern culture, but he's talking about the male species' deepest biological drive is to conquer one's environment and serve as a protector and a hero in the story. So the male's deepest biological drive in the relationship is to be the hero in the story. And if you start to get dysregulated, you're no longer the hero. You're just an asshole who's venting and having an argument with your female. The female deepest biological drive, again, I know you can make your way in life and have a career and not need anybody and not even need to have a date or beat or whatever. The female's deepest biological drive is to nurture and feel protected and cared for and serve that need. And the biggest fear and the biggest danger in the old days was, getting eaten by a predator. And so the physically stronger male generally would serve that protective role in the primal example. Today, John Gray says, what the female's biggest fear and biggest danger is? The anger from the male partner. That's the most destructive thing that you can do to your female partner is to unleash anger and emotional instability and all these things. That's when the female really gets diminished, her hormones get tanked, and she feels terrible.
Interesting. If people ever want a good example of how everything that you mentioned that could go wrong, that has gone wrong, just read my memoir, Tiger of Beijing. Oh, right here, Tiger of Beijing, talking about the male unleashing the anger and staying, basically untethered, how to just unravel at the face of dissatisfaction, and then the destructive force of what it's doing to the female. Because I literally felt if I had stayed in that relationship, my spirit would have died, literally a internal death. So I knew that, and that's why I had to get out. But it's really interesting hearing you talking about that, because I knew it was extremely disruptive and unhealthy, and but I didn't know somebody analyzed it too. It's a perfect demonstration.
It's like to awaken to some of this information is important, because I think now we're getting confused where Now the relationship, we want it to be everything. So I want the female wants the male to serve all of her needs, including someone to chat with in extreme detail about whatever. And so the John Gray male relationship assignment is to engage in what's called Venus talks. And that's when the female needs to vent her energy and talk through what happened in the day. And so the male assignment is to sit there and listen intently without offering advice or solutions. And it's a real challenge because the male's primary biological drive is to solve problems, conquer one's environment. So the female comes home, she needs to vent. Her boss was a jerk again. I don't know what we're going to do about this. Do you know what? Here's what happened in the conference room. And the male says, you know what you should say to your boss? You should say, and then all of a sudden, the potential for relationship wholeness and wellness gets blown out because the man's trying to be the hero of the story rather than just satisfying this need for the female to vent without solutions or advice. And so just to get this advice clear, number one is keep your cool at all times. And if you are experiencing a negative emotional charge, you know what you're supposed to do instead of engage? Go off and do testosterone boosting activities, which are physical challenges. It could be anything that's a challenge where you're trying to solve a problem. So you can go tinker with your motorcycle in the garage. You can play video games. That counts on the list of testosterone boosting activities because that's why it's so popular for young males in those peak, hormonal years. Is they get that need met with conquering and scoring the video game. Of course, a workout would be a fantastic example. Go and lift some weights. If you're slightly frustrated in a relationship interaction, go away and come back feeling whole and ready, for example, to engage in a Venus talk without offering advice or solutions.
Interesting.
Right. And this is, what I was going to say is like, we're confused now because we're told that to be the evolved male, you need to be open and honest and vulnerable and share your feelings and tell me what you're thinking and tell me in detail, tell me more, I'm not getting enough from you. And that's a common complaint in the relationship. But when a female needs to bond in that way, and that's where oxytocin comes in, the bonding hormone, you best get that from your book group where you have a few glasses of wine and you guys can talk about whatever you want. And you don't need to get that from your male partner because he's not going to supply it as well as your female companions. So the male's assignment, stay calm, cool, and collected at all times. Don't engage. Don't speak when you have a negative emotional charge. John Gray is looking at me through the Zoom call going, how many times do I have to tell you guys this? Shut your effing mouth if you are lit up. It's just going to damage everything. Okay. Engage in these Venus talks. Females, did we give the female advice yet? I can't remember. Let me look at my notes.
That's not that.
I don't think so. So it was the female essential relationship and assignments. You must do this in order for the relationship to have a chance. It is express everything as a preference and never nitpick. So nitpicking is telling that male that he's no longer the hero of the story. Now you're going into your mothering role or whatever role that you're doing, or you're a boss, you're a boss lady in the workplace, and so now you're bringing that into the home and saying that, why'd you load the dishes this way? I prefer it this way, this kind of thing. And so if everything comes down as like first thing in the morning, oh my gosh, the kitchen's spotless. You did that last night. Oh, you rock. I love a spotless kitchen in the morning because then I can get started on my coffee machine and making my omelet. And so if it's compliments and preferences, because it can't all be popcorn, candy, and gut bubble gum, you're going to have some shit going down, So if someone is a backseat driver, you can express the preference that you allow me to operate this moving vehicle that weighs 2,000 pounds with minimal, I prefer minimal input. In case of emergency, of course, you can scream and tell me to watch out. But that's my preference when we drive. And then you get somewhere and it's like, how did I do? Did I do pretty good? Thank you so much for I hope you were comfortable. You didn't say much, and I really appreciate that. That's going to work rather than nitpicking. You didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. Yeah. Or what I like is I love looking out in the yard and seeing all the leaves raked into a big pile. It's so nice to go through winter with the leaves taken care of every day. That's going to get your leaves raked rather than, hey, it's been 3 days. I asked you on Sunday, what's going on with that? What's your problem? And so when the male starts to discover that they're not the hero in the story, then they check out. Then you've lost the guy, and now he turns into classic, everyday, dysfunctional relationship jerk who's doing testosterone boosting activities like video games and going out and bowling and staying out till midnight instead of coming home at 9 p.m. to wash the dishes that you prefer are not in the sink.
Well, sounds like supreme diplomacy to preserve the ego integrity.
Yeah, I'm like, a lot of people disagree with this, and I've talked to other therapists, relationship experts, where it's like, oh, John Gray's not all, that's not all up to modern standard. But every time I think about it, and every time I think over the course of my life, when I've gotten into it, I feel exhausted and drained and worse from taking someone down with whatever people do when they get into it. And one big simple example is like, oh yeah? Oh, you don't like how I tried? Well, how about when we're going tit for tat and tit for tat? No one can raise their hand and say that feels good at the end. And that part really hits home because it's like, take care of your own shit. And when I've had like dysfunctional interactions in relationship, when I go back and reason what happened, it's like 97% me bringing my shit into a relationship, and then now the relationship has it. Same with, I would venture to guess that we're all probably around that 97% mark, right? Unless things become super one-sided and you're doing everything you can and you say everything with loving kindness and you're expressing all these preferences and you're getting ignored or the FU back, then you're probably at the point where there's no saving this. But to have that best chance, I love those things. John Gottman weighing in here too, where a healthy relationship, and these are the guys that have studied relationships, the Gottman Institute, in the laboratory setting, like at an apartment with hidden cameras, and they studied couples for decades, and they can tell who are that couples that are going to make it and be loving after 20, 40 years, and then they have 94% success rate predicting couples that will get divorced soon. So they say a healthy relationship has a 20-to-1 ratio of positive to negative comments. And when in conflict, they have a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative conflict. Even in conflict. Hey, I love how you fit so much into your busy day. And you're so excited to wear the best outfit out on our date. And you picked the greatest restaurant. You really took my feelings into consideration when you said sushi. And finally, man, when we miss a reservation deadline, I prefer if we can get to places on time. Are you more open to hear that than like, what the hell's going on? We're going to blow it again out of the gate. You're going to be like, screw you. I was cleaning up your dishes in the sink, right? So if we go 5-to-1, then we have a tiny chance of like progress. Otherwise, it's just tit for tat again. So this is back to the hormone subject of the show here.
Right.
This is huge because there's a lot of occasions of people overly stressed while doing everything right. They're working out like crazy. Maybe they even have super fit booty body on Instagram, and they look like a picture of fitness, not necessarily a picture of health. I promise you that, because I was a picture of fitness who had testosterone of 200 at 6 colds a year. But unless you nail all these objectives, it's going to be difficult when you just focus on logistics.
Yeah. So the stress management, in relationships, I assume it's really important everywhere, basically, not just between, in a romantic relationship, even in work situations.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's like everybody you relate to you're going to have a hormonal experience. Dave Rossi, my frequent podcast guest, author of The Imperative Habit, he says everything we do in life is driven by the pursuit of a hormonal experience. We're all familiar with dopamine, and you reach for the text message because you're going to get a reliable dopamine hit, or you reach for the potato chips, or the a prescription drug, or the street drug, or the pornography, or the fill in the blank. Where do you what are you going for this out of balance? And a perfect example of this, but when we're having a conversation, or trying to raise children. It's all, it's all in pursuit of this hormone optimization again. But then we're bringing in the other hormones, like the connecting hormones, oxytocin, vasopressin. John Gray talks about that, how it relates in a relationship. But mostly testosterone and estrogen are really familiar examples to understand, where the female needs to come down off this competitive side that we demand of the modern female in the workplace, and being the busybody who can handle the soccer mom chores, whatever, where really they're stepping out of their basic biological drive to nurture and care for and protect, and also become a badass and kick ass in the workplace, kind of like a male, testosterone-driven behaviors. And then on the male side, we don't want them just to kick ass in the workplace and come home and pop open a beer and relax. We want them to share their feelings and listen to our stories and do all these things that are not natural to the male biological drive. And so we have to kind of like understand where we're at with our balance and go off and do testosterone boosting activities. And females go off and do estrogen boosting or oxytocin boosting activities like book club and having fun with the girls and talking about stuff you would never talk about with your partner. So that's the